We'll talk about the top forwards in the NBA under 30. It's off-season time. Mama, there goes that announcer. There's some changes with ABC's broadcast team. And we'll do yet another Dame check because we can't get away from it. This is Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your week. Appreciate you guys being with us and making us your first listen. We are with you throughout the week with all sorts of hosts from across the Locked On Podcast Network NBA side, bringing you the best news and analysis of the NBA, including shows like this one, where David Ramil and I, my co-host, try and come up with something to talk about because we are in the absolute dog days of the NBA season. But I'm pretty excited about the show today. We got some really good concepts to kind of talk about, bandy about. We will touch on the Damian Lillard situation between the memo and then the latest report from ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski on Monday that talked a little bit about the expectations of the next kind of key date in the ongoing saga between the Miami Heat, Damian Lillard, and the Portland Trailblazers. We will talk today about some changes with the ABC announce team, as there will be a new finals crew, new key top-of-the-line ABC crew for next season, following not only the departure of Jeff Van Gundy, but another change as well. But we start today, as I let you know, that my name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network and co-host over on Locked On Nuggets. I'm joined by David Ramil. He's co-host of Locked On Heat, where if you want to know more about the Damian Lillard situation from the Heat perspective, it's the best place for you to find it. You're going to find great stuff from both him and Wes Goldberg. Those guys are dynamite. Go check out Locked On Heat. They get caught up on the Heat side of things in the Damian Lillard saga. But we're going to start today, David. You know, we had this conversation 2 weeks ago when I was on the show last, and we kind of talked about, we debated a bunch of guys. Like if you had to pick between these players and they were involved in the Damian Lillard saga, you know, Anthony Simons, Tyler Hero, those type of guys. And I really like kind of the conversation that we got to. So I wanted to open up a little bit more, and we're going to talk a little bit about top combo forwards under 30. We'll probably try and get to, I don't know, 4 or 5 of these on the list. It's an interesting kind of idea to look at to kind of figure out like who actually is and is not 30 years old, because it is kind of the turning point in the NBA. Sure. It is kind of an interesting, idea to look at who are the forwards that are coming up. The list that I provided, David, and that I'm looking at is just guys that are labeled forward by Basketball Reference. So guard forwards are not here. Forward centers are not here, because when you see a list that has Nikola Jokic listed as a forward, I'm like, this is not accurate. Nikola Jokic is never going to be a forward again for the rest of his life. So I want to kind of ask you, David, as you kind of looked at this list, Giannis is the top name on the list I gave you because it's sorted by box plus minus. I think we can probably definitively say that amongst forwards under 30, Giannis is probably number one, right?
I think that's pretty clear. I think, a top 75 player of all time. And given his resume and everything he's been able to accomplish, I'd say he's pretty clearly the best player on this list. Yeah,
he seems pretty good. The second one I think is actually is listed on here is Jason Tatum. And I think that there's still holes with Jason Tatum's game.
Sure.
There are still things that Tatum needs to focus up. I think what's interesting with Tatum, and all the jokes about it, he's only 19. He's only 24 in that last season. So he's still going to be 25. He's still like entering his prime here. Really, the next 5 years are going to be probably the best of his career. He made a huge jump last season, I felt, in control over the game. He was dictating more of being able to leverage against the defense, making plays, being in command, being more of an engine for the offense. I actually think he's a little bit limited in that the Boston offense is so perimeter oriented. So much of it is just perimeter passing that I don't necessarily think it speaks to his best combos of being such a big, strong, athletic guy. But one thing I think that Tatum really gets overlooked as is how good of a defender he is. Like, to me, Tatum is there are very few guys on this list. There's a few, but there are very few guys on this list that are anywhere near the top of this chart where I would definitively say that they were better defenders than Jason Tatum outside of Giannis.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you've either got players that specialize in defense, and even they are not necessarily as good as Tatum is defensively, and they certainly don't produce what he does offensively. He is, in many ways, the total package. Like, he is the kind of player that you build a franchise around at this point in time. I look at next season as being such a crucial turning point for him, because now with Marcus Smart gone And for better or for worse, like he is the emotional bellwether of the Celtics. Like he is going to be defining that team during the regular season, during the playoffs. He's going to be the strongest. He's going to be asked to be the strongest voice in that locker room. And I have yet to see whether or not he can be that player. I know he's kind of dabbled with that. There were moments there where he's kind of shied away from it. And I'm so curious to see whether or not he's able to improve on an emotional leadership level. And I know that's hard to quantify. And at the same time, I wonder if he can match the level of production that he does on the court, off the court as well.
I think we talk about the third name on this list. And again, these are forwards under 30. So like, don't have to worry about LeBron James on this list or Jimmy Butler, even though I think Butler is more of a guard at times. Jaylen Brown is on this list, and I still kind of consider him a guard at this point. So I'm going to leave him off this list for now. But the third best name on this list, I am kind of interested in your thoughts on, because to me, it's like the reason I wanted to talk about this. And it comes down to maybe three guys, which are Julius Randle of the New York Knicks, Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors, and Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. We look at production last season, those are the guys that we probably want to include on this list, because you can like other players that might appear on this list. Aaron Gordon was really impactful last season for the champion Denver Nuggets. Evan Mobley is, maybe has the most upside of anybody on this list, as he's still considered a forward and not a center because he plays next to Jared Allen, quote, for now. Scotty Barnes is on this list. OG Anunoby is on this list, and those guys are good. But if we're talking about the combination of like, you have a high usage, you are a focal point of your team to a certain degree, and you've actually put up numbers that put you on the quote unquote star list, to me, the conversation does kind of boil down to Julius Randle, Pascal Siakam, or Lauri Markkanen. I'm kind of curious to see how you would rank those guys.
I don't have any idea. Like I'm thinking about it, and I kept debating about where each player ranks. I think it's unfair, the kind of level of criticism that Julius has gone. I've always liked him, and I know his production has been so inconsistent, but he was a monster last year. Like he was really, really good. If the Knicks were any good during the regular season, as much as Jalen Brunson was responsible for that, Julius was right there with him. And like, he was injured during the playoffs, so we never really got to see whether or not that was something he was capable of in terms of being able to match that level of production from the regular season. But he is really good. I kind of skew at first thought. I think Siakam is probably the best of those three players. The combination of the fact that he's done it for a number of years, that he's been able to be mostly consistent over the course of his career, and his two-way strengths, I think, are better than these other players. Julius, not that great defensively. Markkanen, very good in terms of like his effort level, I think, but it's still not that kind of quick or switchable. So I think I would put Siakam first, probably Markkanen second, and then Julius Randle third.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's how I would have him too. Siakam, I thought, was really phenomenal last season. I just thought he was
great.
I thought the last couple of seasons he's been just incredible. His versatility, a lot of like
no one seems to give a damn either. Like it's
so weird.
He
doesn't. I think he's been all NBA and hasn't gotten real consideration. And it's kind of been like that's been a stick in. It's kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. Like he averaged 5.8 assists last year.
He's really good.
But that's for a forward who does the bulk of the work on rebounds for the Raptors and does the bulk of the work in terms of scoring as well. Like Siakam is their best player, and that's one of the reasons why like I think last year was kind of messy, is that there is a continued like, well, we need to make the Scotties team, and it's kind of hard to do that when Pascal is still as good as he is, and Barnes is not necessarily as much of a complementary player as maybe you would like for him to be at this point in his career. Siakam is also like, he's an awesome defender. His versatility, that's one of the reasons why I think he's so valuable. I've talked about it on the show before in terms of how much I think it would help the Hawks to go out and do that deal to land him, how much it would change kind of their identity. He is a guy that is able to give you, even on lesser usage, you could still count on 28 and 4 from him on lower usage and be your best defender. And you can feel pretty good about that. And that combo, I think, is really phenomenal. Markkanen is in a very interesting place because some people caught on that he was really good with that Cavs team when they ran him at small forward. And some people are like, who's actually really good. But Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and Darius Garland kind of soaked up all the attention on that Cavs team. They got injured and they missed the playoffs by losing in the play-in tournament. And then Markkanen goes to Utah in the Donovan Mitchell trade. And he burst on the scene last year, and the Jazz are under the radar, but of course they're never on national TV, nor should they have been. Nobody expected them to be good. The efficiency that Markkanen had, the question is pretty much just quite simply like, okay, is that sustainable, or is that just entirely like a 1-year outlier or a product of how everyone scored and shot the lights out last year? Like Markkanen's numbers are 26, 9, and 2, not really an assist generator, but he shot 50% from the field, 39% from 3, and 88% from the line. Pretty close to 50, 40, 90 numbers. He was within range of 50, 40, 90 numbers as the number one option on the Jazz. And so if Siakam gets a nod for me, not only because of his defensive versatility, but because of his longevity. He's done this for longer. But I do think that if Markkanen has another season like last year, we're probably going to have to start reframing the conversation around who he is in the NBA.
I agree. How likely do you think it is? Because I think it's sustainable. I don't know if it's long-term sustainability, but I think in terms of like he's entering his prime right now, I think he's got another few years where he can match this level of production. I don't think Utah has reconstructed their rosters to such a degree where he won't be able to have that high usage that you referred to, because I think it's sustainable. Do you agree that it might be?
I think it is. I think that because one of the reasons I was high on him is what he showed in Eurobasket last year was in the FIBA qualifiers. He was awesome. And so I'm kind of expecting the same kind of stuff from him this year for Finland. He really kind of parlayed that growth that he showed in those games into this regular season. And if he's healthy, I actually do think that he kind of has evolved to a point where he's comfortable enough. He has the combination of size and shooting touch to be able to put up those kind of numbers. A big question is going to be Colin Sexton. Can he find somebody to set him up? If they have the guards to do that, I don't hate the idea of Utah being kind of a dark horse playoff team next season. Mm-hmm. We'll go to the other side and talk a little bit about the changes at ABC. I did want to ask you before we get out of here real quick, some of the other names that you thought should go on this list. Aaron Gordon is a name for me. Evan Mobley's got to be on that list, but I will tell you, Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby also are too. But if I had to tell you, actually my sixth guy after we talked about the 5 that we listed, Giannis, Tatum, Siakam, Randle, and Markkanen, the sixth guy. Do what?
Yeah, I've got to guess who it would be.
Who?
Is it Franz Wagner?
It's Franz Wagner. Right. He's awesome. He's really good. Get ready because the Magic are going to be really fun this season. And Wagner is really underrated in what he brings to the table. Is there a guy on the list that you would want to make sure got mentioned in the top 10? Josh
Giddey. I think he's got that next step ability too. The shooting is a little inconsistent. Just in terms of the potential, I see it from him. And I don't know, because Oklahoma City is such a big question mark as a team in terms of where they are, and they're challenging for a playoff spot or not. And they're still so young, but I really like his versatility.
I would have had, and Paolo Banchero is going to have to go on this list as well.
Oh,
yeah. Top 10. He's going to have to be on there as well. I would have had John Collins on here last year, but I think that now he's probably not in that conversation. Hopefully he can have a bounce back with the Utah Jazz. On the other side, we'll talk about some changes to ABC because mama, there goes that announcer. We'll talk about that on the other side. But first, I've got to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to have the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. I actually use FanDuel to put a bet in on Donovan Mitchell to win MVP because I only bet long shots in the offseason. And he's a long shot, but the numbers all suggest that Donovan's a pretty good bet if you're betting long shots for MVP for next season. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball, though, than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA, thanks for joining us on a Tuesday. Matt Moore alongside David Ramil. And David, there were some changes reported today by Andrew Martin of the New York Post and confirmed by Barry Jackson down in Florida. There's some changes afoot in the ABC world. We already knew that Jeff Van Gundy had been let go and that he would not be returning to ESPN's broadcast. Interested to see where JVG goes next. But it turns out that he's not the only name that's going to be changing it. And it turns out Mark Jackson was actually let go by ESPN as well as they continue their flurry, their absolute avalanche of layoffs, especially in the public sense, in what is expected to be largely a shareholder boosting series of moves. But regardless, the replacement now Doc Rivers, former coach of the Sixers and Clippers and Celtics and Magic, and former NBA player, expected to join the booth alongside Doris Burke. So the booth, the new finals, the new A crew for ABC is expected to be Mike Breen, Doris Burke, and Doc Rivers. First off, I'll ask you this: what's your reaction to the news that Mark Jackson will no longer be gracing our ears with his analysis?
I love it. I was never a fan really of his broadcast work and some of the reports about what he was like as a person and coach. So I'm glad to see him off there. I feel like I love the level of kind of, the friendship that they had cultivated there. And you could tell that they were kind of going at it one another between him and Van Gundy and Breen to a certain degree. Like the camaraderie was certainly unparalleled. And I don't think we're going to get to that. But in terms of like the actual analysis of basketball, some of it was wanting. And I think neither of them did a very, very good job on like selling the appeal of the sport. And I know that's something that's important. I think Doris does a great job in that regard. She talks like a fan of the game. She is a fan of the players, of the work that they put in, of their stories, of everything that they've done to get to this point. And with Van Gundy, it's a lot of grousing. It's a lot of old man yelling at clouds about, I wouldn't have done this. And then back in we don't need that. Like, you want to build an audience. You want to draw them in. And I don't think that between Jackson and Van Gundy complaining or arguing with one another, they did nearly a good job enough of trying to remain positive about what we're seeing on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's probably good to get us a break from the buddy cop comedy routine, because that's kind of how it felt to me. It was like,
I'm too old for this shit. Sorry.
Like, bickering in the cop car, arguing back and forth. You got donuts all over the car seat. No, I didn't. That was you. Like, that kind of stuff really got old. You're right that I think that there needs to be a revamp by the partners to promote the product better. I think that's going to have to happen across properties as well. I will say that I think ESPN has done better than that than Turner, if I'm going to be honest, about at least their NBA shows in the afternoon have guys that are excited to talk about the league. I may not agree with everything that Kendrick Perkins, Richard Jefferson, and the like say, but at least there's like an enthusiasm to talk about how good the play in the NBA is, or what's interesting, or that the sport is awesome, rather than just like complaining about X, Y, or Z. And I think there needs to probably be an overhaul across. I'll be interested to see. The other kind of domino here is what happens in the new media deal with NBC set to make a major offer to try and compete for broadcast rights. Please get us Round Ball Rock back, please. I just want Round Ball Rock back in my life. Despite John Tesh being an anti-vaxxer. Bummed to hear that. Bummed to find that out. My reaction with Jackson, I think, is, there's some announcers that I think have bad reputations I've come around on. Reggie Miller is one of them, and he's still very divisive. Like, there's still people that think he's absolutely terrible. I actually think that Reggie, one, really enjoys the sport, two, watches on his off time. This is a big thing for me is, are you paying attention? Right. And I always felt like I feel like Reggie Miller does pay attention to, like, when he is not calling games, I feel like Reggie Miller is watching NBA basketball. And I did not necessarily feel that way with Mark Jackson at times. JVG, I did, but Jackson, I thought, a little bit less. The Jokic leaving him off the MVP ballot, I don't really care about. It's honestly pretty understandable to me that he just slipped. It happens. Like, I would want empathy if that happened to me. I am excited about the Doris Burke, Mike Breen combo. Doc Rivers, we'll see. I think a lot of it's going to depend on
where. He was great before as a commentator.
He was really great. So I'll be curious to see kind of like where he's at with his mindset. He will. I think the other thing, is because he's coached more recently, he'll have better insights into like why this stuff goes on with resting and whatever else. And he may still grouse about it as an older guy that gets to complain about it now. I think a little bit of criticism for the league is good in the broadcast, as long as it doesn't become an overreaching theme throughout the broadcast where you're not even considering talking about the game at all.
Yeah. No, and I think the recency there of like knowing how to prepare or being able to call out what he's going to see on a play between him and Doris, I think is going to be at a much higher level. And I'm glad you brought that up about watching the game and just being able to kind of talk about things in a positive way. It's just, they're both fans of it. And I think they're going to be doing a much, much better job than what we saw. It's just, I'm glad you pointed it out about Jackson too, because it seems like between him and Van Gundy, both of them were looking for what specifically they were looking for, and they weren't open to talking about other possibilities or things they may have missed or other things just a different perspective. It was just they were so hyper focused on, oh well, that's not a foul or that's not this, or it got to a point where it was just so negative. And I used to mute it. I'll be 100% honest with you. I would watch the broadcast, mute it. I didn't care. You're not learning any from either of those. And so I'm looking forward to being able to hear Doris and Doc talk about things in a way. And I think Mike does such a great job of complimenting any voice that he sits along with that I think it's going to be fantastic.
I'm excited for JVG back on podcasts. I always think he's really good when he does podcast appearances. I think when you ask him to break down stuff, I think he actually shows a little bit of enthusiasm and can answer direct questions a little bit better.
Right. Fair enough.
All right. On the other side, we will talk about Damian Lillard. We'll talk about the latest in the Damian Lillard situation and the ongoing saga between the Miami Heat, the Portland Trailblazers, and Damian Lillard and his representation. We'll talk about that on the other side here on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Tuesday here in the quiet days of August now, as we record this on Monday, the last day of July. Where does the time go, and how soon can we get basketball back in our lives? You realize that's what's crazy is, let's see, August, 2 months from now, we will be back into preseason. You ready for that?
Absolutely. Media Day, looking forward to it. Yeah, speaking of Media Day to start a training camp, it seems like that's like a major deadline.
Great transition, David. That was A+ stuff. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reported on Monday on ESPN that the next major deadline, as David referenced, for the ongoing Damian Lillard saga is going to be training camp. Is that will the Blazers be able to handle the stress of Damian Lillard's ongoing trade demand and the question of whether or not Dame will show up? What does that mean? The media day thing, I think, is interesting. It depends on how much you prepare for it. I think if you're the Blazers, the answer here is to call Dame and be like, I don't have a trade for you yet. I'm working on it. And he'll say, no, you're not. Okay. I don't have a trade for you yet. Do you want to come to media day? Do you want to start practices? Do you want to be with the team? And if him or his agent, I think you should do it. Probably, I would talk to him and not his representation, which seems a little bit more anxious about these things. If Dame says, I'm going to show up and I'm going to blast you, you go, okay, that's fine. And you prepare your staff. Like if he decides to come in, if he says, I want to be at media day, I'm going to start training camp. You just talk to the coaching staff and the players and be like, this is going to be a distraction. I apologize that this is happening. We're trying to get it resolved as quickly as possible so we can move on. Let me know if you have any concerns. If you prep everybody for it, you can get through it. And Dame may be like, I'm on contract. I'm going to come and I'm going to play. I'm going to work. That's what everyone kind of expects. If Dame says, no, I'd rather not. I don't want to play for this franchise ever again. I'm done with you. I don't ever want to play. You say, that's totally fine. You announce Damian Lillard's been excused from team activities as we work to continue to find a trade. And then you got to prepare everybody the other way, because no matter what, the biggest problem is that it's really distracting for young players when they're starting their NBA career and they're getting nothing but questions about this other situation. Like it's a real distraction for them. So that to me is the key that they're going to have to manage.
Yeah, it absolutely sucks. And we should point out that Wojnarowski mentioning that this time, August, is usually when coaches, general managers, front office executives, et cetera, are on vacation and they're not really responding. They're not really moving forward. So who knows whether or not there's any kind of incentive to get things done. I feel like there should be. And I know a lot of people will say, well, of course, the Miami guy thinks so. It's just, I've been in enough media days right now where the vibes are something I think are important. Look, 30 teams report to media day thinking that they have a shot at the championship. Unrealistic as that might be. But that kind of is important to me in terms of like how you build forward. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And with media day, it kind of sets the tone for how you approach the regular season and everything that comes with it. This is going to be a young team. They're not going to win a lot of games. But you know what? At least you want to do what you can to cultivate that excitement and not have it be drowned out by the constant questioning of like, oh, what's going to happen? Is Dame going to show up? Like, you don't want that negativity. And I think it's just I'm not Joe Cronin. I'm not in a position to kind of swing this trade one way or the other. But it feels to me like nothing's going to change so much more dramatically from Miami's perspective. They'll go to camp with Tyler Hero, whether he's disgruntled or not. They don't give a damn. They're going to move forward and they're not going to necessarily bet against themselves. They're not going to increase their offer just to get this done quickly. Like Wojnarowski said that, I'll say that. Like, that's just not how the Heat have operated. Pat Riley's experienced enough to say, you know what, I don't care if it goes till February. I don't care if it goes till next year. If, we'll pull it off when we have to pull it off, and not a second sooner. You're not going to exploit me for more just so I can wrap this up quickly. I don't care if everybody's upset or not. He's been around basketball long enough to know it ultimately doesn't matter if you can finalize the trade at some point and then you move forward from there. But from Portland's perspective, like, you're rebuilding. Like, that's it. Like, Dame, I don't think will ever play for the Blazers again. And I think you want to be able to move forward. That era is closed. It's done. Get started on something new. Have Scoot Henderson be the future of this franchise that he looks like he's going to be. Have him kind of take over the leadership reins, at least publicly, and with the excitement of media day from day one. I think it would just be such a positive step. So that's just my perspective on everything.
Okay. I'll play devil's advocate here.
Okay. Fair enough.
I would say that Riley may be okay with it. The problem is the disparate situations between the two franchises in terms of their immediate goals. Every single person with the Portland Trailblazers know they're sunk. Next season is done. It's one of the biggest reasons you got to get Yusuf Nurkic out of that locker room. Like, you got to get him gone, because it is not going to go. Like, Nurk will show up and it will be like he will grouse like the entire time, right? However, the Blazers at least know we are not going to be winning games next season. We are not making the playoffs. We're not contending for anything. The Miami Heat just lost Gabe Vincent and Max Strus and are coming off of a finals appearance with the expectation of competing for a championship. Mm-hmm. And you can say, like, Pat Riley can say, like, I don't care about anybody's feelings. He'll care if Kyle Lowry is checked out because he knows that he's nothing but mincemeat to them, and Caleb Martin is worried about where he's going to end up. Teams in that situation, like, it's not just Dame, it's all of the guys on Miami that are likely to be included in the trade. And Miami has a lot more to lose in the first 30 games of the season than Portland does. If things go terribly for Portland, ultimately it's like, boy, that sucked, but hey, we got the number 2 pick to go with Scoot Henderson, or the number 1 pick to go with Scoot Henderson. If things go wrong for Miami, it's at what point are you too far back to catch up, because you are down 2 key guys that you let walk, presuming this trade, and you have however many guys that are unhappy on the roster. Tyler, I'm actually like less worried about. Like, I think Hero will be fine. Kyle Lowry, I don't know where his head's at.
I think he'll be fine too. Like, because he's a minor role, but I don't know what's going to change. Like, you need a starting level point guard, and I don't think Kyle's going to be that guy. I don't think they can expect it. So I don't know if they can sign somebody else. Like, I mean, the reports are that they're interested in bringing Goran Dragic back one way or the other. Like, that's not going to get it done. Like, he's fine as a third point guard behind Dame and I guess Kyle or somebody else. I don't even know what the final roster is going to look like. I think you're right, and I understand that perspective. I also think that, look, we just saw this play-in team go all the way to the NBA Finals, and the importance of the regular season is not as great in that front office. Like, I know they view it as you just want to keep testing things, you want to keep getting better, you want to build towards the postseason when it matters most. Jimmy's going to take his foot off the gas regardless. He is not going to care as much about 82 games as he cares about winning the next 16 after that. So I think they can weather the storm of the next couple of months. Again, I don't see that even if Cronin refuses to get this done, and Portland, just invites other suitors that magically don't appear to be there right now. I think Pat Riley is not going to feel pressure at this point in time. Like, he's done this before.
Some of this may simply be that Miami's just like, we don't have anything else to offer. There's nothing there's nothing else there.
What are you going to extort us for? Like, you're not going to get an extra pick or an extra great asset or player. So it's Caleb Martin the sticking point that keeps the Dame Lillard trade from happening in August as opposed to like February? I don't think so.
Yeah, so I do think it's an interesting question of where the leverage is, as that continues to be like a very big talking point. I will say I am interested that there's just like Miami has all the leverage. It's like a constant thing that I hear, and I'm just like, I don't know, guys, because they don't have a point guard. Like, you don't have like up, and the answer is like, well, they made the finals from the play-in tournament. They were down big time, in that fourth quarter of the second play-in tournament game. Like, it could have been done right there. Like, they could have lost right there. So, and a lot of this is like margin for error too. This is part of the problem is like, go ahead.
No, you know who the point guard of the future is? It's Nikola Jovic. Come on. He's the point guard.
Well, I mean, you can't give up Jovic then. He's the future of the point guard. You also can't give up Caleb Martin. I mean, he just almost won ECF MVP, and
He did.
You can't give up Jaime, because I mean, Jaime was drafted 18th. What a great draft pick that is. So, we're just gonna
let's not go down this road.
Miami fans make up the mystical third team that the Blazers are going to find a given offer, and Miami fans are making up a mystical offer that somehow they're not going to send anything. They're going to send out Kyle Lowry and like some suits from Pat Riley, although they probably might be worth more than Tyler Hero in the open market. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Hope you guys have a great week. Tomorrow, Jake Madison, John Corrales. You've got Thursdays with Nick Angstadt back from vacation alongside Pat the Designer. Fridays, you got Wes Goldberg, David's partner over at Locked On Heat, and Adam Mara is my partner over at Locked On Nuggets on Friday's episode. Check us out all throughout the week. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Have yourselves a great week. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On NBA.
Love you, Tyler.